Hi, so I'm David. I'm here to talk about creativity, which at a TED event is not that unusual. But I want to talk about creativity not simply in terms of the workplace or education or for making money, but for everybody and for all of the time. So I'm going to say little bits of creativity are not trivial. Small acts of creativity can change the world. What people need is platforms for creativity to help them along. Small acts of creativity can change the world. What would be really great for me to illustrate this would be if I had some kind of story, a TED Talk kind of story to illustrate that. So how about this one? In 1864, in Germany, there was a little girl who did the most beautiful drawing of a butterfly. And she gave it to a kind old nun who kept it in a locket for 50 years. Until on the last day of her life, she handed it on to her nephew, who was a soldier, and yada, 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 and Hitler was defeated. Or how about once there was a boy playing in the sunshine with some mud and sticks and microchips and cables, and he invented the internet. But I'm not talking about those big, spectacular acts of creativity. Those huge innovations and inventions are fine, but I'm interested in little things in everyday life. So my kind of example is like a boy knits a scarf, and he's really pleased with it. And 6 other people see it, perhaps, and they're struck by it. And out of those 6 people, 2 of them are inspired to make their own item of clothing. And that's really good, isn't it? It's not as good as the butterfly drawing defeats Hitler one. But I think change comes sometimes from huge transformations, but also from people in everyday life just changing how they do things changing bit by bit in terms of how people behave in their everyday practice. And so in this case, if we can get people taking a step into the world of creativity, feeling themselves as makers and not just consumers of stuff in the world, I think that can be really powerful. The real reason for talking about this is we heard this morning about the need for people to feel more connected with the world, more actually engaged in what's really going on, didn't we? And I think that's super important. And I think making and creativity can be one of those things. If you feel like you're participating in the world because you know that you can make things and do things in the world, that can be a really positive thing. And when we look at challenges like climate change or other big issues in the world, I maybe don't know the answers to those things. But what I do know is that if people can take this step into creativity, if we can foster creativity in the next generation as well, then we're going to have people who are engaged, switched on, and can come up with answers to those kinds of things. So I think supporting the development of creativity is super important. Creativity is also vital just for feeling good in yourself. And I think people want to be creative, but they want some kind of help to get there. So how come I'm here talking about this? I boiled it down to 2 things. The first one is Lego. So, you know Lego. I've loved Lego all my life. I think this is some Lego, in case you've not seen it before. I think one of the things we learned from Lego is that everybody can make something, and that you don't just have to have things that are made and sort of given to you, but you can make lovely things for yourself. We also get the idea that things can be taken apart and changed and remade and done differently. Switched-on design and business people these days are really keen on rapid prototyping, aren't they? Rapid prototyping, that's an exciting thing. But I think we shouldn't forget that we were all pretty good at rapid prototyping, weren't we, when we were 7? So another thing you get from Lego, I think, is the sense that you can start something, and it might go well, but it might not go well, but you can do it again, you can change it, and you can do it better, which I think is a powerful thing, and it's kind of optimistic. So my second thing is music. Obviously, we all like music. Music's always around, isn't it? But in my house when I was growing up, well then, there wasn't much pop music. What we had was my dad did a lot of whistling, which was attractive to me, and maybe some local dogs. But then I played the clarinet, which was not very attractive to anyone, even including myself. But as I got a bit older, I started to think about pop music and engage with that. So I got my first piece of music journalism, which was this exact magazine, when I was 14 years old. This is Smash Hits from July 1985. It seemed kind of risky to engage with this kind of thing because it wasn't part of the sort of the culture that my parents talked about. But so this was Howard Jones here. That's Howard Jones. I loved Howard Jones. So I was a 14-year-old boy and I loved Howard Jones, which was fine. But Howard Jones was mostly loved by 14-year-old girls. So it didn't have that kind of punk rock kudos that came with other kind of genres. But Howard Jones, as was well known to the readers of Smash Hits magazine, he worked in a cling film factory, and he'd been dismissed by record company executives as a one-man band because he produced all his own stuff on a synthesizer. So he wrote songs, he produced them, he recorded them, he did it all himself, which I thought was good. So here's Howard Jones. That's Howard Jones. That's a synthesizer. See, this is what we used to call a record. So you won't have seen these, but this is a record. These were carved out of granite by men and women working very hard in the Welsh valleys. And the music was poured on in liquid form by mice. But Howard Jones persevered, and he got out of the cling film factory, and he was able to make music his life, which was really kind of inspiring. And of course, that really is the punk ethos, but as applied to sweet electropop boys. And then Howard Jones's songs were all about the power of the individual to change their own world, which I found inspiring, and not feeling constrained by other people's expectations. And Howard Jones was going to do all of this creative stuff because nobody and nothing was going to stop him. So again, optimistic, powerful, I liked all of that. That's maybe some of the roots of my thinking on this if we go way back. But then, if I'm here talking about the power of creativity and making things, which I am, then you might be thinking, yeah, okay, thanks, but I know creativity is important. And of course, you do. And people say to me, they say things like, oh, creativity is so important, isn't it? I love it how my son does these pictures of cats. Or creativity is vital, isn't it? My daughter does amazing things with the Lego. So these are people who get the idea of creativity is important, but in relation to somebody else. That's a bit like with play. I've done work on creativity and play. And people are starting to get that idea of play now, aren't they? Play being a really important thing. As an idea, obviously, not as something you'd actually do. But they get this idea that play, it's about sort of two people coming together, sharing something of their worlds, sort of connecting through stories. It's a great way of generating ideas and innovation. So people say all of that, and so they say, that's why we need really excellent, playful primary schools. I'm like, yeah, okay, but we were talking about the power of play, and then you arrived at that. And of course, that is important. We do need the playful schools, but we need the playful everything else. So in that case, you've got people who are really keen on creativity and play if done to small people. Of course, that's slightly unfair. People talk about creativity about themselves as well. Often I meet people who say things like, oh yeah, I love being creative, and I like making things and taking something through from an idea to sort of starting to do it. It's really powerful for generating ideas and being imaginative. It's just such a shame that I've got a job, so I haven't got time for anything like that. So I think we like creativity, but often we like creativity as a concept. So finding space in your life to be kind of creative and to do interesting things is hard. And that's why we need platforms to help people along. That's why I talk about platforms. I like this quote that I got from the 1970s, 1980s kind of feminist called Rosika Parker, she'd done research about embroidery through the centuries. And she talks about it as, on the one hand, a marker of femininity, which embroidery is, I guess. But at the same time, she talks about it as a weapon of resistance, where women have taken the opportunity to carve out some time within their lives, which is just their own private time to do their own thing. And that's really powerful for them, as sort of a positive view of this particular kind of activity. And so about embroidery, she says this, I've got this quote, the experience of embroidering and the embroidery affirms the self as a being with agency, acceptability, and potency. The embroiderer sees a positive reflection of herself in her work, and importantly, in the reception of her work by others. So that's good, isn't it? And then if you link that to the kinds of creativity that we might be doing now, like if you think of something a bit different, like blogging, say, which is not the same as embroidery. But if we put blogs and blogging in here, then you've got the experience of blogging, and the blog affirms the self as a being with agency, acceptability, and potency. And that's right, isn't it? The blogger sees a positive reflection of herself in her work, and importantly, in the reception of her work by others. So I think that works, and it's about the power of making, and it's about being seen. That connects with 3 points that I've always said about making and creativity, which is that really it should be about conversations, inspirations, and making things happen. Conversations, inspirations, and making things happen. And then if you connect that to platforms, when I'm talking about platforms for creativity, these can be any kind of thing, really. They can be big or small. They can be online or offline. They could be in libraries or museums. They can be events or environments. They can take many kinds of forms, but they tend to involve an invitation to step into a particular kind of experience with others and do something together, and connect with some kind of story. In terms of that meaningful, powerful, coming together kind of thing, then what my brain thinks of is Lego Serious Play, because I've worked with Lego on a thing called Lego Serious Play for about 10 years, and they've been developing it for more than 15. Lego Serious Play is a consultancy process for adults, often done with businesses and organizations, where you get people in a room and they build stuff in metaphors using Lego. So that's weird, obviously. You go through a process to get used to it. So you get used to building in Lego, building in metaphors, and then people are able to share elements of their experience or their feelings by building this stuff. It's really powerful when you've got several people who are able to build the stuff, they tell the story. Everybody's got a voice because everybody builds something and then they put it together, and you can see relationships and connections. You can say, oh, it's really good that we've got these similar kinds of things about this, but these things are so far apart. You can really visualize it. It's a really good physical experience. And obviously, it's contrived for that purpose. It's emotional and it's immediate and it's really powerful. And we've created it for that reason. But then how could you have stuff like that in everyday life? How could we spread that out so you're having that kind of experience much more so that people can feel the joy of making and can recognize each other as thoughtful makers? So I've got one example that goes with that, just to illustrate it, which is the cardboard challenge. Have you heard about the global cardboard challenge? It's one day in the year when people get together to make some stuff out of cardboard. That almost sounds like not an idea, doesn't it? Any of us could make some stuff out of cardboard in our kitchen this evening. It's a thing because of the invitation. People are invited to do this thing on the same day together, sharing stories by showing them online or in doing it together. And that is the power of it. It stems from a story, which is the story of Kane's Arcade. That's an online video that you might have seen. It's been watched by millions of people. And so this is a true story. I'll just tell you how Kane's Arcade came to be. This is what happened. In Los Angeles, there was a guy called Nirvan Mullick. He was sort of in his 30s, a filmmaker by background, and he needed a part for his car. He needed a door handle. So he drove to this place in East Los Angeles, and whilst the guy is off getting a door handle, well, then Nirvan wanders about, and he finds this huge arcade, like arcade machines, pinball, like grabber kind of machine, those kind of machines. All these machines made out of cardboard. They've been made by the guy's son. He's called Kane. He's 9 years old. So Nirvan takes an interest. He pays $5 for a fun pass, which entitles him to 500 goes. So he has a few goes on that. And then he's got his door handle, and he's about to leave. And Kane's dad says to him, you do realize you are Kane's first and only customer. He's been doing this all summer, but no one's taken an interest before. Kane's really pleased, of course, to have one customer. Nirvan goes off, and he's thinking about this, and he gets in touch with Kane's dad again and gets permission to do a bit of filming and stuff. And then it gets to this point where Kane's dad takes Kane off for a pizza at a pizza restaurant, and they come back, and lining the street, there's more than 100 people who've all turned up for Kane's Arcade to have a go on the arcade because Nirvan has done a kind of flash mob thing. So there's like over 100 people cheering, they've got banners, they're really pleased to see Kane, they want to have a go on his arcade. And Kane's delighted, which is good. I met Nirvan at a conference and we were talking about this, and I said, weren't you worried that Kane would just be overwhelmed? He's been doing this thing on his own in the choir all summer. Suddenly there's more than 100 people there. I thought, Kane might just be overwhelmed by this. But Nirvan said, well, yeah, maybe. But that we filmed this bit, a sort of interview bit that appears at the end of the video, where we asked Kane how he felt when the car pulled up and he saw all of these people were here and he realized that they were there for him. And what he says is, I felt proud. I felt proud. And that's it's an extraordinary kind of thing, isn't it? But at the same time, I think it's an everyday kind of story in the sense that it's about somebody does something creative, shares it with some other people, and their spirit soars. So then that led into Kane's Arcade. That led into the Global Cardboard Challenge. It's a kind of celebration of what Kane did. It's inspired by that story. People come together, they accept the invitation to step into a shared experience where they do something together, see each other as makers, experience the joy of making, and recognize that we're all here together on this planet, and we can do stuff which is new, which wasn't there before, which is exciting to do together, these kind of physical experiences which maybe we sometimes lack these days. And I think when things like that happen, what you can see is little acts of creativity are not trivial. Small acts of creativity can change the world. People just need some kind of platforms to help them along. Thank you very much.